Meeting is now called to order. Need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second. Second, anyone? Jesus. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. Okay, we're down to items for discussion. We're here tonight to discuss and finalize the budget. Brian? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In front of you, you will find the manager's budget message. It's been amended to include the changes that the board has done so far on the recommended budget. You'll see in there it increases the health revenues based on the expansion project that was approved by the board or recommended by the board in the budget for the health department. You'll see where the expansion and recurring has the cost, and you'll see the difference there. There is some additional revenues that come in. There's also the economic development personnel change that was approved by the board at no cost. That was simply an internal change. Then at the last meeting, you proposed decreasing the school's current expense by $180,000. So that shows that. And what that all did with those additional revenues is increase contingency by $196,854. So you'll see those in the general fund balance out at $143,614, and then there's an increase in the annual fee by $5 from the recommended budget to $165 for the solid waste annual fee. That generates $116,750, and that funding was put to increase the solid waste tonnage processing fee. You were provided information on Friday by email from the school system, the information you requested. I think Katie sent out a note just asking, did anybody need that printed? I'm not sure if she got any responses on it, but that information is available for you. Mr. Cheeseman said he was available if you had any questions. Chief Deputy Rose is here tonight as well and has some, would like to discuss with you some requests they have based on your resolution that you passed at the June 1st meeting. And then you also have in front of you the budget ordinance, the proposed budget ordinance. As we told you at the last meeting, we would go ahead and prepare the budget ordinance for you because you need to have it in writing in front of you. This was also sent out last week. I think we sent it out Thursday for your review. It includes exactly where we are right now, no changes since from what you got. We are prepared to make any changes that you may need in that budget ordinance tonight, and then have it available for you if you wish to adopt the budget ordinance tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Chief Rose, would you like to come up and you got any items for discussion?
Mr. Chairman, could I have a point of order?
What's that?
Point of order?
Yes.
At our last meeting, I was told that I was wrong, and the agenda that we approved didn't have that item up here. And we approved the agenda, that item to discuss the budget. Is this part of the budget process?
This part of the discussion.
I mean, but is this part of the budget process? Is it?
I would say yes.
Oh, essentially, Chief Deputy Rose is asking for the board to consider an addition to the upcoming budget based on the resolution that was passed by the board. So it would fall into your discussion of next year's budget.
But why wasn't it on the agenda that I voted to approve?
Well, it says discussion of the budget.
No, it didn't. Not the one I got. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, but it's fine. I just wouldn't.
We have the same option with
Yeah, but I think it says here discuss and finalize the budget
with Matthew Cheeseman. If we got any question, yeah.
Yeah, that's the agenda that I have.
Well, this would be part of discussing and finalizing the budget for next year.
No problem.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I agree with Commissioner Booth. This is not on the agenda for tonight. This is sprung on the board at the last minute, like a lot of things are. It's wrong. The sheriff has had the same amount of time that anybody else in Beaufort County has had to prepare a budget and to ask for these things. And now, all of a sudden, we've got an emergency request at the last minute. And I believe with the rules of the board, this is a new business item. Cheeseman is an ongoing discussion that was agreed on by the board, would be an ongoing discussion, that we keep asking him questions. We never agreed with the board, with the sheriff, to allow him to continue to increase his budget right up to the very bitter end of the budget process. He's supposed to submit his request just like everybody else. I realize the sheriff is special, but we need a vote on this board, from this board tonight, to decide whether we even going to hear this or not. And I move that we do not hear these items.
Is there a second?
No, I can't second it since I'm the one that wrote the resolution.
No, yes, it's a different business item, Stan.
Well, I know it's a different business item. I still like to hear it. I mean, I'd like to know how much the final cost is and everything else.
All those in favor?
Wait, we're still debating.
He got a second.
I second it.
Okay, you second it.
Yeah.
Well, we're still debating this issue, and you're trying to rush it through, Mr. Chairman.
Go
So,
ahead.
has the deal already been done in the back room?
I see you dressed up for a show, so go ahead.
Well, this right is right and wrong is wrong. This budget process is allowing people to walk in the door while we're getting ready to approve a budget with a request for additional funds is just wrong. Now, you've got, the sheriff took money, gave raises to his employees, and no other county employees got raises. So now the sheriff's allowed to come in and pamper the budget at the very last minute. What about all the other departments that may want some additional money that forgot something or suddenly decided that they needed something? Fair is fair.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Booth.
you got a first and a second. And I wasn't here to silence the sheriff or his department. I was here to correct the lie that I told last month. So, I mean, if it passes, that he come up and present his items, I'm fine with it. For the sheriff, Chief Rose to do it.
Any more discussion? John?
It appears to me that instead of battling each other over every little item, that we sort of got to find a way to work together for the good of the county and not for the good of any individual. And so based on that, I think if we have our employees that are out there facing danger that was just happened on June 4th, just 4 days ago. And now they're trying to figure out a way to protect not only themselves, but the people that we passed the resolution for. And to say that you can't come in here and figure out a way to help, that we should help do that, that just doesn't make sense to me.
The sheriff already had all the items that he needed for riot control, so he's told us several times in the past. This is just a way to blow up the budget and an excuse to get more money at the last minute. What happened to the budget process? You don't have a budget process. You got a backroom deal process. And by the way, Commissioner Rebholz, you misspoke. The sheriff has set himself as being apart from the rest of us. So there's real special conditions here. So I want to stick to a budget process that actually means something, that is deliberate, that people go through the process, that doesn't allow people to walk in at the last minute and destroy the budget.
Commissioner Waters.
Mr. Chairman, maybe a solution would be for you to call a special call meeting as soon as we can have that, and we'll have it just for that one item to discuss and be referring to the 2019-2020 budget as an amendment.
Mr. Chair, we got a motion on the floor. I think we need to go ahead and vote on it, up or down.
Okay, all those in favor of, what was the motion? It's been so long ago.
Allow Charlie to speak.
Not to allow, all those in favor of not allowing Charlie to make his presentation, raise your hand. All those opposed to the motion, raise your right hand. 5-2. Charlie, come on up.
Mr. Chairman,
Welcome.
rest of the commissioners. I'll go ahead and say that I'm not usually comfortable with being in a position where I am right now. If I'd known that I was going to be in this spot, I probably would have worn my body armor, at least the back panel anyway. But once again, I thank you for allowing me some time. On Tuesday, we received an email that had a resolution that was passed by the Board of Commissioners, which if I may, I would like to read that. It's entitled, "Beaufort County is resolved to protect the civil liberties of all citizens by enforcing all of our laws. Whereas Beaufort County citizens all enjoy the civil liberties of American citizenship purchased by the patriotism of our forefathers, guaranteed by the United States Constitution, and whereas the Beaufort County citizens' civil liberties protected by our United States Constitution affords our citizenry the right to own property and therefore benefit from that liability of ownership, an ownership that under tax lien, taxed with yearly demand for payment, and whereas Beaufort County citizens' purchase of that public protection of their property through their representative government's obligation to provide for a Beaufort County Sheriff Department to protect and serve its people, and whereas Raleigh, the state capital of North Carolina, and far away from Minneapolis, Minnesota, has been attacked by anti-American anarchists for 2 straight nights, May 30th and 31st, with many downtown businesses victimized by these thugs who hate America and its people, and whereas Beaufort County Sheriff was elected to serve its citizens with the responsibility to protect property and preserve the safety of our citizenry. Therefore, let it be resolved that the Beaufort County's commissioners are resolved to protect the civil liberties of all citizens by enforcing all of our laws, thereby promising the Beaufort County Sheriff the commissioners' full support to employ all of the rightful and swift force necessary to achieve that charge, and to responsibility to do so. That's as it was worded.
Yeah, it's not right.
Thus, prospectively restoring order from lawlessness should anarchist insurrection visit Beaufort County. Be it further resolved that Beaufort County Commissioners request that the Beaufort County Sheriff have the ultimate resolve to plan for action to effectively stop any prospective lawless destruction and theft of property, to and including deputizing capable volunteers, requesting the National Guard, etc., or any other feasible stratagem to quell any possible anarchist insurrection here in Beaufort County. Adopted this the first day of June 2020, signed by Chairman Evans. The second page that you have there shows the yes votes and no votes.
Would you read them out for me, Chief?
Yes, sir. It says yes vote, Commissioner Dethridge, Commissioner Rebholz, Commissioner Richardson, Commissioner Waters. No vote, Chairman Evans and Commissioner Booth.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. In the packet, and I believe everybody received the packet that I gave out, the next section of that is a memo that was penned by the sheriff that I would like to read as well. Civil unrest is not a new idea to this country. The United States of America was born in a time of civil unrest against the tyrannical rule of the King of England. Civil unrest and violent rioting have scarred our country many times since 1776. Following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the United States has experienced an increased number of violent riots that began as peaceful protests. Citizens, law enforcement, and National Guard personnel have been injured, and millions of dollars worth of property have been damaged during these riots. Our state has seen a mix of peaceful protests to gain support of a worthy cause, as well as violent riots that included injuries, damage to property, and looting. On Monday, June 1st, 2020, protests were held in the city of Washington, focused on the downtown area or the waterfront. Fortunately, these protests were peaceful. On June 4th, 2020, a group of protesters, some of them armed with handguns and at least one rifle, took to the streets of Washington. The June 4th protest was different than others because of a lack of communication with officials from the city of Washington, the fact that they marched on open streets, and that several of the protesters were openly armed. The Washington Police Department, with assistance from the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, the Greenville Police Department, and the National Guard, ended the protest without incident. I'm now going back to Monday, June 1st, 2020. The Beaufort County Commissioners adopted the resolution, Beaufort County is resolved to protect the civil liberties of all citizens by enforcing all of our laws. The resolution stated that commissioners have an obligation to provide for a Beaufort County Sheriff's Department to protect and serve its people. The resolution also had wording stated the commissioners resolve, therefore promising the Beaufort County Sheriff the commissioners' full support to employ all of the rightful and swift force necessary to achieve that charge. The resolution further resolves the Beaufort County Sheriff have the ultimate resolve to plan for action to effectively stop any prospective lawless destruction and theft of property. With the amount of destruction across the country, I, meaning the sheriff, have recognized the need to have better protective equipment to handle incidents that involve civil unrest with the possibility of violence and property damage. I need to outfit my deputies who serve and protect our citizens and businesses with the following equipment that will offer better protection during the incident, as well as properly documenting properly document by the use of video and audio recorded evidence of any incidents that occur. Sincerely, Sheriff Coleman. Okay. So the timing, there was conversations about equipment needs and things that could arise as soon as civil unrest, civil disobedience, riots, and property damage and injuries for law enforcement and protesters started to arise. So there was conversations within the office on that already. The resolution did hasten what we felt was a need to respond to the commissioner's resolution. In talking through Brian and Anita, I spoke with Anita on the financial pieces of it. I spoke with Brian on the protocols that would need to be in place to address the board, since you had already had your June 1st meeting. The word that I got back from Brian was that this needed to be brought forth as a discussion for the upcoming year as far as the budget goes. And I am perfectly content with that. But I also, just as many times as I try to communicate with the board, I try to bring as many options as we can to take care of the requests that we need. So therefore, it is understood by the sheriff and I that ultimately it's the prerogative of the board to make a decision on when and if any of these requests are met. But once again, the sense of urgency on trying to come in tonight was because of the resolution that was passed on June 1st that we received on June 2nd. I was not here for the discussion part on June 1st when you discussed it and it was passed. Quite frankly, the Washington Police Department and the Sheriff's Office had our hands full that night. The protests were fine. It was great. It was peaceful and it was good, but that still we had over 40 personnel involved just in case it went bad, and the police department had roughly the same amount of personnel that was there. So we were busy. The pages behind the letter, you'll see a quote from Lawman's out of Raleigh. One of the reasons why we picked Lawman's was, one, we do a lot of business with them, but in the discussions that we had at the office, I made contact with a lieutenant who runs the mobile field force for the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, because they have a force specifically dedicated to civil disturbances, and I knew that they were also going to be needing to upfit and upgrade more of their personnel just because of the things that are going on throughout the state. So the information that they provided was that the stats and specs for what they were looking for, they were going to make the request and requisition through Lawman's. So then I made contact with my contact at Lawman's and got the same exact information that the North Carolina State Highway Patrol has gotten. So therefore, in a quick period of time, we saved time on the research of the equipment and material and other things that go along with the purchase, just because in many times in the past, we know that if the North Carolina State Highway Patrol is going to make the purchase, then those things have been researched and vetted out. And that, you'll see the quote, there's four or so pages. Behind that, we took the liberty just to help out as far as to help me and to help the commissioners in making decisions. You'll see a visual representation of the items that are listed on the quote. So you'll see that the items that we are requesting are by its very nature, defensive in nature. It is the only item that you can see as being an offensive item would be the baton, which, quite frankly, when used correctly, is more of a crowd control and a defensive weapon than it is an offensive weapon. Usually when you see the batons as an offensive weapon, that's when you see issues with officers that are not using the equipment that they are provided in the way that they are trained to do. There are offensive tactics and things to use with the patrol, with patrol, so I'm not trying to make any representation that is inaccurate, but like I said, usually when a baton becomes a weapon, it's later going to be described that it was used against training and protocols. The last part of the request is to fully implement the body cameras. That was spoken about during last year's budget, spoken about quite a bit actually, and there was some questions that came up from the board about numbers for fully implementing at the time. We sent out some information, but the conversation really never led anywhere. It wasn't led by us, and it wasn't brought up by commissioners. But we bring this to you now is that in where we are as a society, as an age, audio and video is necessary for both sides to try to help determine what happened in an incident. The other night on the 4th, we had, that was the second time in a week that we were trying to deploy upwards to 40 deputies. Some of those had cameras, some of them didn't. But that was sort of an afterthought. Once we got assignments put in place, then we went through it and said, all right, who has a camera and where are they going to be? And then we saw that there was a pocket of deputies that we had assigned to a location that nobody had a camera. Now, I immediately thought, well, if anything goes on there, then nobody is going to believe that we didn't have a body camera. I said, sure enough, I wouldn't believe it if it was brought to my attention on that. So there are challenges that go along with the equipment that we have, but it is now the time that it is fully necessary to get us to the point that we have as many body cameras out there as we can, not just to show what happened in the bad incidents, but to help out with training, but then to also to help out with hazard mitigation and liability mitigation, but to also see that if we do wrong, then we'll see that we've done wrong and we can correct that without it turning into the law enforcement said and the people that we were dealing with said, and there not being any evidence to support either direction. And I hope that makes sense. So you see that in total, I put just a summary on the very last page there. The total of what we're looking at, if I can find my last page. The total request is $65,000, $65,676.15 for the equipment to field a mobile field force at the sheriff's office. That is 40 sets of equipment. The reason that we did 40 and not 70 is that it's highly unlikely that we would ever be at a time that we can implement 100% utilization of sworn. What 40 gives us is that we can give you two recent examples. We've used 40 deputies in situations over the past week. That also gives us some help and leadway when it comes to sizing equipment. It's like sizing for people. Some are going to be smaller than others. So we can set the standard, which are probably going to be mediums, medium larges, and then we'll have some that are going to be the extra larges, and then we'll some that'll have some that are smaller, so we can cover more of the possibilities of what deputies that we'll have to use in those events. The second part of the request is $24,420.83, and that's for the full implementation of body cameras to all sworn. That is just to make sure we get all of the information out there. The request alone for cameras over the entire deal would be right at $100,000. But if you remember in the financial deal that we had with the cameras, it was set over 5 payments. Well, we've made one of the payments. We've made the deal through utility and body worn, if it is accepted by the board, that they would add the 26 additional body cameras. They would cover the cost of one carrier, so the fabric that goes over the body armor, one carrier per body armor added, so it's 26 carriers, and then the retrofit of that carrier to add the camera. That would be covered in the cost just like they did in the initial installment of the cameras that we had. So $24,420.83, the first installment for this year. In next year's budget, I feel comfortable that in a close to $10 million budget, over 3 and 4 budgets if you look into it, that we will be able to make the close to $25,000 payment by use of a budget amendment to cover next year. The following year in the budget, we will of course have a little bit more time and plan and have that listed in a separate budget item so it could be carried on forward. So options. Once again, when I went to Manager Alligood, we talked about the options that we have, and the rules was that I need to present this as a budget item moving into next year's budget, and I'm comfortable with that. That is, you as commissioners, your prerogative to choose.
Point of order. Point of order. Do you recognize me or not?
Go ahead.
What is next year's budget? Is next year's budget the 2021 budget or the 21-22 budget?
Was that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay. So next year's budget would be the budget that you are discussing tonight.
Yes, okay.
You know, so that's 2022. Well, like I said, I'll give us many options.
2021 to 2022. So
Well-
2021 budget.
2021, yeah, 2021. 2021.
Yeah, you are correct. I just usually go for the second year of that when I'm talking about. But yes, sir, I understand. And my apologies if I wasn't clear. So, okay. So as far as the discussion goes, completely the commissioner's prerogative, whether if you want to take this into the next budget. But we also came forth with information that we can do this deal in this year's budget, meaning 2021, if that is the prerogative of the board. And that request would be that we use $60,000 from the drug asset forfeiture account, and then the additional $30,096.98 from the safekeeping account in the sheriff's jail's budget that hasn't been used very much because of the special project ordinance that's in place for the jail project. There was $100,000 that was initially appropriated for safekeeping because, as we all remember, that project wasn't supposed to take the entire fiscal year. So there's right at $71,000 in that account, which, granted, I will give you that at the end of the year, money's money, and in every line, if there's $1,000 or $5,000 or $70,000, then that ultimately is going to be used by the finance officer in the county to make sure that the accounts are there. But that's one of the reasons that I speak to the finance officer and the county manager before I ever bring it to the commissioners, is that those funds are there. We have the ability to do that, and ultimately it's the prerogative of the commissioners. That is my presentation, but I will answer any questions that I possibly can.
Let's clear up on the years. Are we talking about 1920 or 2021? No, what you said this year, we can finish this year, which is, this year's about gone. Anita, can you help us with that? I'm asking Charlie, but I'm just trying to get clarification.
Oh, I think if I understood Chief Deputy's presentation correctly, he's presenting this for next year's budget, which is 2021, but he also provided you with an option that he's looked at his budget in the current year, 1920, and he's found $60,000 in drug seizure funds available to use towards this purchase, and the remaining 30-some thousand out of the sheriff's office budget and safekeeping.
That's correct.
Questions? Commissioner Waters?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure, because of the fact that we're discussing next year's budget, that we can do this, but until somebody tells me otherwise, I would like to make a motion that we take these funds out of the...
Mr. Chairman, point of order. We're discussing this item. We're not ready for a motion. I have questions to ask outside of the motion.
I will yield to Commissioner Richardson.
Go ahead, Commissioner Richards.
Okay, I noticed you talked about people bearing arms in the demonstrations. Where do you stand on the right of people to bear arms openly?
Without a doubt, bearing arms is a constitutionally protected event. The Second Amendment covers that pretty clearly. We don't have a problem with carrying openly or concealed, but we're just trying to give you the totality of circumstances. This is when you are dealing with a group of people that are peaceful, but then there has been examples that things have gone astray, and there has been violence that come out of that. Dealing with people who are armed and known armed, you have to deal with them differently than what you would deal with them otherwise. But I'll also say that the equipment that we're asking for in this is more of the equipment that would go along with the issues of things being thrown, whether it's rocks, whether it's frozen bottles of water, whether it's Molotov cocktails, all of which have been seen not just in the country but in North Carolina as issues. When you are trying to effect an arrest of someone while you are being attacked by others, you need to have further protective gear to do that. And I'll finish that by saying every act of law enforcement that we do, we try to plan for what we've got to do and how to protect the deputies that are involved as much as we can. When we know that people are going to kick doors in on warrants, we get them equipment so they can protect themselves. If we are going to be dealing with civil disputes that turn violent or civil disputes that are not, we need to be equipped so if they do turn ugly, then we have the right protective equipment to get that job done and get it effectively.
You're asking for riot control equipment?
Essentially, yes.
Because that's what I see here. Everything I see here is riot control equipment.
Yes.
And we haven't had a riot yet, although there's always that possibility. I agree.
Well, sir, by law, a riot is 3 people that are breaking the law in a group setting. So technically speaking, by law, June 4th was a riot because it wasn't coordinated with the city. It was a group of people that were in a peaceful protest, but they were protesting on streets that were open. So by its essence, laws were being broken, but because of the professionalism of the law enforcement involved and the decisions, the good decisions of the people taking place in that protest, nothing really bad occurred.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Booth?
Charlie is absolutely correct. They passed right by my house, and I wouldn't be more afraid of them than I was walking in the guy with a gun on his side at Walmart. I didn't see no threat. I mean, in the Constitution, we live by the Constitution. It protects anybody. I mean, I don't like it when I walk in McDonald's and somebody sitting there with a Glock sitting on the side, but that's their right. I respect their right. And these folk did not violate not one single right. It was 3 people, 4 people. I've seen 3 people all the time gathered with them 9 millimeters and stuff. I mean, but it was wide open where you could see. I sat right there in my backyard, talked to some of your deputies. They just come by here. I wasn't threatened. We just overreacted because it was a bunch of black men with a gun. Hell, white folk been carrying gun all their life.
I didn't hear a question.
Yeah, it's not to you. I'm just telling for discussion.
But on that is that if anybody can come to me with anything that was done by any one individual of our deputies that was unprofessional, illegal, or wrong, then let me know and we'll take care of that. But our folks were ready, our folks were prepared, and our folks didn't...
I did not say that. Not one of your deputies did a single thing wrong. They was doing their job.
That's correct.
But those people that were walking the street, They didn't violate no, not, when it came about my place, they didn't violate no law. I mean, I sat there in my backyard and looked right up and go down the street. It didn't worry me one bit. And after they come across the yard and started, I might would have had a problem. But I mean, what is the difference? I wish some of y'all would tell me. What's the difference in them walking the street with a 9mm than the guy sitting in McDonald's and Bojangles with one? What's the difference? Please tell me. Is still the Second Amendment right? Is that correct?
If I can, I'll finish.
Yes,
to
go
say
ahead.
that if any other groups, and you fill in the blank, if any other groups, whether organized or disorganized, would choose to protest in or around Washington, our job would be the same. It would be to protect the rights of all involved, the bystanders, the people that are protesting peacefully. And we have done that. We will continue to do that. I feel that the police department did an outstanding job of doing the same, as well as the communication between the groups. But we were ready as we could possibly be with what we had at the time for if something did occur that we needed to do that. Fortunately, for everybody involved, we didn't. But moving forward, we need to be more prepared than what we were. Because we were asking, the sheriff and I were asking deputies to put themselves in more harm's way than what we should have with the equipment that we provided them to have.
Well, let's clear it up. I didn't say that they'd done anything bad. Not one of them.
Yes.
And I commend them for the job that they've done. But I didn't see all this big hoorah that everybody else saying.
Sure.
I mean, there wasn't a brick thrown, there wasn't a baller busted, there wasn't a match struck. But now here we go, got to millerize everybody in the county. I mean, I just didn't see it. It may happen tomorrow.
Sure.
But I didn't see it the first, nor the fourth. I didn't see it, and I was out. You saw me pass by.
Sure.
You saw me. I rode right, because somebody called me and said downtown. I went down to see was anybody burning up the Hackney. Wasn't anybody down there but us and y'all? I'm serious.
Yes.
Am I telling the truth?
I believe so.
All right. And we thank you for the job you done.
Thank you.
Could I finish with what I was doing?
Sure, go ahead.
I'll go through it.
Does the sheriff have shotguns?
We have less than 10 shotguns.
You have 10 shotguns. Do you have pepper spray?
We have pepper spray.
Do you have tear gas?
We do not have tear gas.
Okay, now, the operations, and we're walking a fine line here, and I understand it. We don't want people to come to Washington or any part of Beaufort County and burn it and terrorize it. I think we all agree with that. But I have a problem with the sheriff showing up in riot gear. When you show up in riot gear, you're looking for a riot. In just about every place that law officers have showed up in riot gear, they've had a riot. So the strategy...
We also show up in places with body armor and with guns, handguns, shotguns, rifles. We're not doing that because we're looking for people to shoot and kill. We're doing that because we need to be as equipped as we possibly can with the funding that we are provided to handle the tasks that we are overall being asked to do. And we are the safekeepers, the law enforcement officers of Beaufort County. If something happens in Greenville and something happens in Washington, when we ask for help, Greenville's going to get help and we are not. So we need to position ourselves in a way that we can take care of ourselves and our people without getting or expecting resources from outside areas, because it may not come. And I know that when we're dealing with things that may not come or may come or all of that stuff, that there's always going to be issues. And I hope that this purchase is an absolute wasted purchase that I can get, that you can talk about for years on. But in the climate of where we are as a nation right now, it's more likely than not that we are going to have to use the equipment that we are asking for here, not to go out and look for a riot, but to protect ourselves if we're enforcing those laws. But I will agree with you that as many opportunities as we can, that we will go in with a soft entrance, but we still need to have deputies that are ready to go in when the crap hits the fan, that we can go in and rescue our deputies, that we can rescue the people that are involved, that we can protect ourselves, the people in the protest, the businesses, and the business owners. We should have had this equipment forever, but we have made decisions along the way to fund other things, because when it comes to funding 1, 2, or 3 things, we pick the top 2 that we need, and number 3 may go by the wayside. That's where we've been for a long time, but those days are over.
Well, Charlie, I've got a problem with the budgetary process, that it has not been followed. And the other problem I've got is Johnny come lately. You guys should have thought about this a long time ago, because you've told us repeatedly that if we just let you buy body armor, that was all you would ever need. And this thing just keeps escalating. So the next thing I guess we're going to need is a tank. You know,
I would love to see minutes where I've ever made that statement. Love it. I would love to see that. But I have not, and you know I have. But thank you.
How many body cameras do you need?
26 additional will give us full implementation of sworn deputies. Now, we, eventually, we would like to put body cameras on jailers, but it's not the time. Now, as far as the money-wise and for the situation that we have in the jail, usually there's enough cameras around to cover what we need to cover, but there is a difference from getting that first-person view. You get to hear what's going on. Sometimes you get to feel what's going on, and eventually we would like to do this. But the 26 additional on here gets it to the point where all sworn deputies are covered. So if you see that vest that has the sheriff running across the top and you see the little emblem there, that there's going to be a camera in that one. So that covers criminal investigators, drug unit investigators, school resource officers, bailiffs, patrol guys, all of which are used in events like this. Yes. Yes, sir.
Over here. June 4th, the altercation, the demonstration. Where did that occur? Who was there? How many people were there?
Initially, we got reports from the police department that there was a group that was gathered in a residence near the intersection of 6th and Bonner.
That's right.
We got indications that it was anywhere from 20 to 60 as far as the people, and the numbers ebbed and flowed, which happens. It was hot. It was hot on the 4th, and we received the call at about 4 o'clock. Roughly a little bit in between 5, maybe 5:15, the group that had gathered at 6th and Bonner, they went mobile. They didn't get in vehicles, all of them, but they started walking or marching, as it's been described in the newspaper, through several different blocks. They went down Market, they went down 6th, they went down Bridge, they went, and sort of, you really can't say it was a loop, but it was sort of circular in the motion. They would hit different intersections and hit different blocks. The numbers went anywhere from, like I said, when they were marching, from anywhere from 40 to 60. There were cars that got involved, that some of them came in and people would get out of the cars and start walking. There'd be vehicles that would come up and people would go out of the crowd and start getting into the vehicles, and that was what was being reported. They walked, they marched for a little over maybe 2 hours. It got close to dusk, and then the crowd gathered back at the same residence at 6th and near Bonner, and then that's when communications started going on between the police department, several contacts throughout the community, with the family that is associated with that residence, and then the conversation took place for a little over an hour before ultimately the group started to disband, go home at in between 9 and 10.
So anyone arrested?
No.
Did the Washington Police Department don riot gear?
Washington is rough. Well, they're actually a little bit better off than where we are, but they have very little gear. The gear that they do have is just like with us. We do have some gear. We have enough gear to cover really our drug unit, because those are the guys that make the high risk entry, so they already have some of the equipment that they would have, including helmets and masks and things like that. The police department does have some gear. They may have the same amount that we do. I don't know for sure, but they have less people than we do. So there are some differences there. Director Drakeford He and I spoke several times. He was able to actually borrow some gear for some of his personnel, starting with the June 1st protest, which everything went great with. So their guys had it. As far as whether it was donned or not, most of the gear you can keep on your person. You can have a helmet that's attached to your side. The mask can be attached to your side. So you can look softer than a fully geared up riot law enforcement officer, and then just wear it when you need to, or be staged somewhere else and be brought in if something does go wrong. So I hope that answers your question fully.
Yeah, that's got me a little bit. National Guard, they were called in.
I will tell you what I know without, because I don't know a lot of the micro details because it wasn't my job to know at the time. Director Drakeford, once he started gathering information of what was going on, that we knew that there was, that Greenville was standing up for possible protests, and we knew that because of the events that occurred the Sunday before, that they had made a request and received a contingent of National Guard personnel that are trained in civil disruptions. So they were in Greenville. There wasn't anything going on in Greenville at the time as far as anything going on, so Director Drakeford made a request, and Greenville responded, and the National Guard personnel came with them. Fortunately, it was all getting ready for what could have happened, but nothing happened, so it was overall a good event. They were stood up, and then they were gone.
For them.
Well, I think most agencies, but including us, we turn everything into training. We turn gearing up and getting ready for a possible event that never happened as a training, because that's where you see some of your flaws. Are people going to be ready? Are people going to answer their phone? Do they have the gear that they're supposed to at the time, and things like that? So, yes, I think that all agencies involved would take mobilization and gearing up and gearing down as a training event.
Is the relationship between your group, our Beaufort County Sheriff's Department, in good standing with the Washington Police Department?
I've been with the Sheriff's Office for right at 16 years. The agencies have had their ups and downs when it comes to relationships. About half of that time I spent on the road where the relationship didn't matter. When you're working shoulder to shoulder with an officer in a task, you don't care where they're from, what their bosses think of each other. You're just looking to do the job, keep everybody safe, and let everybody get home at the end of the night. But in the last 8 years that I've been involved in the leadership of our office, it's been very important for us to have good relationships with anybody and everybody who would be willing to help us. And I believe, and this is my personal opinion, you can speak to Director Drakeford anytime you like to, I believe that the relationship between the Sheriff's Office and the Washington Police Department has been as good as it's ever been, but at the very least as good as it's been in the last 16 years.
When I wrote this resolution, I wrote it thinking that there was a possibility something could happen eventually, and I wanted us to be prepared. Now, I'm a Beaufort County Commissioner, and of course, I don't control the sheriff. The sheriff controls himself. However, I wanted him to know that he has our support, providing that he goes in there rightfully and responsibly, and we would back him, because sometimes politicians, we can see every night on the news, don't back their law enforcement agency at all, and that's wrong in these kind of situations. I mean, it's getting crazy in our country. One of the things I'd also like to say is what happened was terrible in Minneapolis, but I don't think it warranted what is going on throughout this country. I think that it was just a spark. I think there's going to be more sparks. I think we're going to see more of this. And I don't think the unrest is so much with the American people as it is with agitators. And these agitators are very well funded and very well coordinated. And they're frightening, basically. These aren't the inner city folk. These are the folk that are coming in from outside. Could be coming in from outside of our country. So we need to be prepared.
I respect your statement. I'll go back and fall back to, it is our job as law enforcement officers to protect lives and property for everyone involved.
Yes.
And that goes down to the suspect that we're apprehending.
Absolutely.
When mistakes are made, and mistakes are made, when laws are broken and laws are going to be broken, It's important for the system, however it is, to handle that quickly and with equality over whoever the suspect or the victims are. And that isn't being seen across the country. I can't speak for the world, but I can speak for Beaufort County. And Beaufort County, I think we do a pretty daggone good job of showing up and getting the job done correctly. But when we make mistakes, we have to say we made a mistake and then we fix it. And that's what we've done. That's what we're willing to do. And all we're doing in this request is to try to take care of the things that the citizenry expects us to do anyway. And we are asking, and part of it is because we need to strike while the iron's hot. Because 2 years from now, if everything quiets down and we ask for this gear then, nobody's going to listen to anything. We need it. We needed it 2 years ago. We need it now. We're going to need it 2 years from now. I appreciate the ability to have a conversation before the commissioners on that. And I'm also glad that we figured out a way that we can take care of that once again, that it is the people's money. It is Beaufort County's taxpayers' money, but we figured out a way through smart management to be able to take care of this once again without adding the burden to taxpayers who are already burdened.
I have just one more question to finish up with this. What if, for some reason, your relationship with the city of Washington deteriorated, and there was a problem here locally, and the city of Washington was not heeding the call? Would you take over and defend the streets of Washington? Because I would expect you to.
The sheriff's office, I'll make a quick answer of this one. The sheriff's office and the sheriff is elected by the county,
Right.
not the cities.
Yes.
So we will protect and serve all citizens of Beaufort County, whether in the cities or not. And we have operated with the city when things weren't great. But like I said, that's where it gets to folks from the sergeant level down, working and operating besides people with the city, sergeant level down. And once again, like I said, you call it what you want to. When it's going down, you don't care
No, you don't.
who it is that's beside you, the color of the shirt they wear, the color of the skin they have. You don't care any about that. You're wanting to do your job, do it correctly, and get everybody home safely the best you can. So even if it does go awry between our agencies, the professionalism of the agencies are going to stand out from the folks that are on the road.
So you guys would show up to defend if you were the only brown shirts there?
We got black shirts. There was talk about switching to brown several years ago, but I fought that one tooth and nail. But yes, we're going to look to be anywhere and everywhere in Beaufort County. We have crash parties before when we weren't invited, and we'll do it again. But right now, it's great. There's phone calls made to me. There's phone calls that we make. We don't have to wait for a request right now. There's a lot of times when we hear it, we share the information and say, hey, we're here if you need us, and let us know what we can do to help. So things are really great right now.
So you have a great relationship with Chief of Police now, but what happens with the new Chief of Police?
Come on, stand. Commissioner Rebholz.
Charlie, when Commissioner started this discussion, you indicated that they have told us a number of times that they've got this gear. They've got sufficient gear.
Yeah, the right words, they had sufficient gear, this was all they would need, and now all of a sudden we find out that they don't.
Don't have sufficient gear.
By their own testimony, they don't have sufficient gear.
So what kind of gear do you have then?
We have, minus the vest, whether it's under the shirt or over the shirt, the gear that I'm wearing here is the patrol uniform. We do have some additional gear that's carried as far as the OC spray that was mentioned. So our patrol guys carry tasers. Some carry batons if they choose to, which are the collapsible, expendable batons. Some carry an extra set of cuffs, and some would carry, or the patrol deputies will carry a pouch that has nitrile gloves in it. We have, I'd say, right at a dozen kits that are ready to go that the drug unit uses. Right now we have 6 drug unit investigators, so 6 are assigned, the other 6 are in storage. So if we had rocks being thrown at us, we'd have about a dozen kits.
So that, you don't have enough of this for most of your people?
We don't have helmets, we don't have any of the protective gear around the shoulders, chest, legs, floor. We only have a handful of gas masks. So say we are working with Washington, right? And we are working with Washington, everything's okay, but then it goes to the point where something goes on and Washington pops gas because they have that capability, then our guys are as useless as anybody else in the crowd if they get popped with gas or munitions or anything like that. So that equipment is needed and necessary, because if we do have times that are big like that, we're going to be working with agencies that are bigger and larger, well-equipped, and have the other gear that we would need.
Okay. And last, the 24,000 of out-year commitment, of additional out-year commitment on the cameras?
For the cameras, yes.
Yeah.
At 25, I mean, just.
Right, okay. And you think you can, in the future, be able to fund that internally?
For next budget year, the budget that you're looking to put in place tonight,
Right?
yes.
And we can make the first payment out of last year's budget? The
Correct.
1920?
Correct,
The unspent?
correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Waters?
This is just a follow-up question. How old is some of the gear that you've got that protects your face?
The helmets and masks that we have were there before I got to the office, so.
So are they
2004.
25 or 30 years old?
I mean, they're old. They had, I've, seen pictures of the crews before they purchased the 1911 firearms, and those purchases were made 22 or 23 years ago. So we had at least some of those before then, but there hasn't been a helmet purchase since I've been at the office.
And the other question, or I say question, comment, is I'm making the assumption that the city of Washington has a request for you to be there on June the 1st and June the 4th.
Yes, there was communication between the agencies. We knew what was going on, and then we put our numbers together.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Langland?
Chief Rose, I'll just say this straight up and simple. Since you have given me an explanation as to where the funding was coming from, I don't have a problem with your request that you were taking it from safekeeping and the drug buy money. So I don't have a problem with you doing this. The problem I had was I was not going to add almost $100,000 to our budget that we're working on tonight, but because you've done it this way, I don't have a problem with it.
I understand, sir.
Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I guess the question is, can we make a motion to amend the budget tonight, or do we just give a straw vote of support so they can go ahead and place an order?
We don't have to, it's not a budget item. He got the money, he got his own money. Yeah, he got his own money.
Well, I'm assuming it still has to be amended, does it not?
Mr. Waters, when Chief Deputy Rose and I had a conversation earlier today, and he asked about this, I had a conversation with the county attorney, and that conversation was, does this presentation fall into the special called meeting purpose? And that purpose was to discuss the upcoming year budget and to formalize that budget. That is why Chief Deputy Rose said initially that I am happy for this to go into next year's budget for that discussion. I then asked the county attorney, logically then, what happens if the board says, well, we don't want to do that, we want to go ahead and pay for that? Can that be addressed in this meeting? And the county attorney said, I believe that that's appropriate. So I don't tend to speak for the county attorney. He can certainly stand up and say that. That is the conversation he and I had in discussion of this matter, and I had a conversation with the chairman about it. Thank you.
That's correct.
So is the chief financial officer satisfied with that amendment?
Commissioner Waters, we will need an amendment. When I went back and looked at the budget, the drug seize money currently only has $50,000 budgeted. They have $140,000 in fund balance available, but only $50,000 was budgeted this year, so we will need to amend it just to appropriate the additional 10 there from fund balance. And then, of course, the additional, the $30,000 from safekeeping is already budgeted. We'll just simply move that down to an equipment line item, but there will need to be a budget amendment.
Question.
Yes.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, the budget amendment. We're still not increasing this budget. We're using the money that he said, that he already has. Is that correct?
We're using current funds out of the current fiscal
That's
year.
the unspent funds. So the budget that we can vote on tonight, this won't be in there. It'll just be an amendment.
To the current year budget. Does not affect next year's budget.
Okay. So the money stays the same on next year's budget.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, it does affect next year's budget to the tune of almost $25,000 a year, doesn't it?
That was something that was already there.
That was,
Well, he's going to pay for it out of the existing appropriations that's currently in the budget for next year. So we'll be increasing the appropriation piece.
These budgets.
Commissioner Waters.
So you're saying in July, you're going to bring us the amendment, the amended budget?
We'll need to ratify it in July, yes.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
I got one other question. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know, I mean, and maybe Chief can answer this. What happened to that, I can't remember what number it is, but the federal government give y'all this equipment. Is it I heard it on TV today, that they give you this gear. They give people, some of them Jeeps and tanks and all that other stuff. What is that?
I believe that you're speaking of like law enforcement supply services.
Yes,
We are a participating member.
I thought we were.
We are very limited on the use that we have had. Pretty much the only thing that we have right now from law enforcement supply services are the 2 deuce-and-a-halves that we have. Those are equipment that we have to keep up, and if we choose to get rid of them, we have to get permission from law enforcement supply services to do whatever we're going to do with it. But those are the only pieces of equipment. To maybe answer a question before you even ask it, it is so hit or miss on what you're going to get if you do look for those purposes. And one of the reasons that we went with what we did was we know that it's going to be guaranteed that it's going to work how it's supposed to. It's been researched and vetted out by the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, and if it comes to a time that we are using it in the field, they're going to be using it in the field as well.
Thank you.
Just got 2 more questions. The $65,000 or so, we're going to have to pay the tax on it, or is the state of North Carolina going to let us slide on that since we're a government?
That's probably more a question for Brian and Anita.
Are we going to pay tax?
Tax
The
on-
sales tax?
No, we get that back from
So
the state.
it's a true $65,000.
To be clear, we pay it.
And then we pay it back. Very good.
So the only thing that I would say on that is that my experience doing the purchase orders is that usually we leave that off, knowing there's going to be payment that's going to be made, but the funds are going to come back.
Are you, the money that's being spent, are we getting a good deal? Is this like a state contract? Do you think we're getting, or is it a supply and demand thing? Should we wait later to get a better deal, or what?
Well, we run into several issues. Once again, I would say that probably one of the issues that we're going to have is that we are not going to be alone.
Yeah.
Just about every law enforcement agency in the state of North Carolina is going to be looking to get more gear.
Yeah.
In talking with the lieutenant from the Highway Patrol, he told me that they're preparing a very large request that's going to go before the state, and the state's going to approve it. You know, and once again, so it's like everybody's going to be looking for the same stuff at the same time. Our problem with time is that we needed it before, we needed it years ago. So we are sort of playing catch up, but we also are competing with just about every agency in the state. As far as the state contract pricing, you're not going to see items like this on state contract because It is sporadically bought and purchased. You see, on the state contract stuff, you see stuff that is usually purchased by agencies over and over again, time and time again. But we are piggybacking off of the price quote that Lawman's gave the State Highway Patrol, and they are trying to get that business. They are going to try to, and they will be competitively quoted from other places, but that's the business the business side of that piece.
So, and we're piggybacking.
Yes.
Is Lawman's going to, is the state, are they going to get the state of North Carolina's business, do you think?
Yeah, the quote that they received, that's the quote that they're pushing forward from the colonel and the highway
So you
patrol
think
to the.
this is their very best you're going to get from these guys?
That is, with the information that I have readily available, I believe that is accurate.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, we're back to discussion and finalizing the budget. Any more discussion?
On the budget, yes.
Okay.
I've got several items. I'll go through them as fast as I can. Number one, is any part of this meeting being recorded or filmed?
It's a special call meeting, so it's being.
It's being filmed? Okay.
Brian, hold on one second. Brian, do you have a comment? I'm out of line.
If you were taking action on this, for us to bring it back as a budget amendment for you to ratify in July. Just tell us.
For Charlie's stuff.
Yes.
We just need to start over, but we will motion.
What do you,
We would need direction from the board.
Let's just do a show of hands.
that,
For what?
I was going to have to say what for. Has to go in the minutes.
We have to use this money to buy that equipment, the body camera, the do-all you need, the rest of you need. And
Would be something, just go ahead and make a motion. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and vote.
is,
I kind of got it. We couldn't. Okay. I'll make the motion that we do the mobile field force equipment that would give us 40 sets, as well as 26 body camera units for a total of $90,096.98.
How much is that cameras we got?
Now, add to that, finance to be paid for as described from the restricted funds and other surplus funds in the safekeeping budget.
Did you get that,
you're amending that? Okay.
Katie? I'll agree to that.
I'll second.
Yes, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0, motion passes. Commissioner Richardson?
The rest of the list. In Section 3 of the proposed budget are the 5 frozen positions in the Sheriff's Department in this budget in any form. We're not going to hear about 5 frozen positions in next year's budget.
The total number of positions in the sheriff's office budget, according to this, are 102.
No frozen positions. Okay. All right. In Section 6, the 20 to 21 fee schedule appendix, I presume that's in, do what?
There are 102 positions. They're listed.
Authorized, normally it's 107.
So,
There are no so-called frozen positions in this budget.
Not at 102. I don't know that we ever have frozen positions, but you have authorized positions. And of that, the board asked us to put in authorized positions by department.
All right.
So each of those departments has the authorized positions that this board approved or proposes to approve.
The sheriff proposed 60 positions. So you've got 60 positions in the sheriff's department, and among those 60 positions, there are no frozen positions.
Sheriff's office has 102.
Well, in the summary of the authorized full-time positions that's presented in the budget document, beside of 60 is 5 frozen.
He's just looking at the deputy line.
That's at the deputy line. You have a total number of positions allocated to the sheriff's office.
Okay, let's go back. Then there are 60 deputy positions in this budget, not 65.
That's right.
Yes, but it's, again, and I'm not trying to split hairs with you, but remember when the board allocates full-time equivalence positions to the sheriff's office, they are allocating a total number. The sheriff could take those and put 60 of them in the jail if he wanted to, or he could put 60 of them on the road. So it's the total number, and that's 102.
That is precisely why this is a weak, uncontrollable, and ineffective budget. Because my question still has not been answered.
Can we state it another way? You stated from 65 to 60. We're saying he's going from 107 to 102. So he normally would have, in a normal year, 107 total positions among his 3 divisions. He is elected to freeze 5 positions, so that takes him to 102 authorized next year. And that's what the salary and benefit line items represent, is 102 funded positions.
All right, but if I heard you say that correctly, there are 5 frozen positions in this budget. Then we can look for the coming year for the sheriff to have 60 deputies. Now, you can give me a speech about moving people around and all that, and I'm going to tell you again, that's just why this budget process is weak, ineffective, and uncontrollable by the commissioners.
Mr. Richardson, what you're failing to understand, and we've had this conversation, is that the Board of Commissioners has the ability by statute to set the total number of FTEs that the sheriff's office as a whole has. You have set that at 102. Once the sheriff gets that full-time equivalent, he cannot exceed it, but he can put those people wherever he wants within those divisions.
Let me ask you this way. How many full-time equivalents did the sheriff have last year?
That's what she said, 107.
And he's going to have 102 this year.
Yes, sir.
So there's a reduction of 5.
Yes.
Okay, then that's, I guess, all I'm going to get out of that.
You just got to add the
Commissioner Waters?
Because there was not a total in here, Brian, I just totaled it up and I came up with 382 total positions.
Oh, you're talking about total countywide?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes, 382.
Well, it's in section 3. If you look at section 3, the sentence reads, the total authorized school competitions for FY 2021 are 382 and are authorized as follows.
Thank you, thank you. I apologize.
Okay. Okay, going ahead. Section 16, drug seizure funds, I guess okay. I would make a motion that drug seizure funds for the coming year, which we have always done until the last 4 or 5 years, those funds are in a separate budget, put in there a separate way, and they have always been approved by the commissioners. They are not a part of the budget. It's a restricted fund that sits there, and when the sheriff wants to buy something with it, he comes to us for approval. So I move that the restricted funds in the drug seizure budget, that any expenditures during the coming year be approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Did we just approve this, expenditures out of that?
No, I'm talking about the coming year. I'm not talking about what we just did.
Okay.
I'm talking about the budget going forward.
I've heard this discussion before, and I'm trying to remember, under the state statute, does the sheriff have to come before us for approval?
Yes.
I thought he was restricted to certain items that could be purchased.
It is, but we have always approved it until about 4 or 5 years ago.
My question still is, under the state statute, does he have the authority?
Commissioner Waters, my understanding, and Chief Deputy Rhodes can correct me, is the funds themselves are required to be used for certain purposes. The sheriff's office has to make sure that they use those funds for those particular purposes. Okay. The reason there was a change is that in prior administrations, under previous county managers, let me put it that way, under previous county managers, these funds were not budgeted in the budget. They were brought mid-year and approved as a budget amendment. Correct. What we have done is to try to show that and put those funds in there as they should be in the budget so that you know what your total budget is. So that's why it shows $100,000, because that is what the sheriff's office has requested. The sheriff's office is then bound by your current purchasing requirements to do certain things. If they exceed a certain dollar amount, they have to come back to you to get a purchase order. To require them to get approval for anything they buy out of that money would take an action by this board, which I think is what Commissioner Richardson is asking this board to do. Is that?
Yeah, take it out of the budget, put it back where it was before, when we had the authority to approve the spending of the money. What the manager is saying is, I just opened the floodgates and they can do whatever they want to with the money. And the sheriff is already wasting money all over the place and spending money that he's not authorized to spend. Witness the huge salary increases that he stole from the county and gave to his employees.
So again, let me be clear. The sheriff's office is bound by the purchasing policies that every other department is bound by. So if they exceed a certain dollar amount, it has to come back to you for a purchase order. We have budgeted these funds in the budget ordinance the way it should be done. Prior county managers have not done that. They have allowed the sheriff to come in mid-year and say, I want to do this, and then it was handled as a budget amendment. We've put it in there so that you can see the full budget. If this board wants to put that additional restriction on the sheriff's office that in addition to the normal purchasing requirements that you require of every department, if you want additional requirements, particularly for this fund for him, then the board would need to vote on that and agree to that.
Commissioner Waters, you have?
I think we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'm going to oppose the motion when we vote.
Let's go over that motion again. The motion is that these funds they are already restricted funds. I'm not sure it's wise to take restricted funds and commingle them with general funds. That was the reason this thing was set up to begin with. You can disagree if you want to, but this is a matter of policy, and it does not concern you two. It's a decision for this board to make. So you can sit back there and lobby all you want to, but you're out of bounds. Now, my motion is that these funds, restricted funds, be removed from the budget, put back and kept in the restricted fund that they're in, and that the sheriff make requests to draw these funds from the Board of County Commissioners during the year. They were restricted for a reason and for a purpose. And that reason and purpose is these are seized funds. These are not taxpayers' funds. They are seized funds. And the legislature directed that they be used in certain ways to be controlled by county commissioners. That's why you have them in the budget to begin with. Otherwise, you write a check to the sheriff and tell him to go have a party. So that's my motion.
Was there a second?
He's got a second.
Okay. John, do you have a question?
Originally, you indicated it shouldn't be in the budget. Then you just indicated that's the reason it should be part of the budget.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
The manager, well, let's go back and clear it up. We don't need to argue about this. I'll clarify my motion. My motion is that these funds be removed. The manager says they're in the budget right now, that they be removed from the proposed budget and kept in the restricted fund that the legislature says they're to be kept in, and that those expenditures be approved individually by the county commissioners during the coming year. That's my motion. Was that your second?
That's the way I understood it.
Ready to vote? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? 5-2, motion fails.
Okay, I have some questions about fire and EMS districts, and I'll try to go through them real fast. We have several fire and EMS districts, and some of this stuff is unclear to me when I go through the budget. The Aurora, and I'll make a statement, the Aurora Richland Township has a fire and EMS tax that covers them. the Chocowinity has a, township has a EMS and fire tax that covers them. Washington Township has only an EMS tax, so who pays the fire and what is the source of funds for fire protection in Washington Township?
The north side fire tax.
That's the north side fire tax. Okay, good. All right. Bath Township has an EMS tax, but no fire tax. So where does that come from?
The north side fire tax.
All right. Pantega Township has an EMS and no fire tax.
The north side fire tax.
All right. How does Bellhaven fit into this? The ordinance talks about Pantego, but it never mentions Bellhaven.
Bellhaven chose not to have a tax in their jurisdiction specifically. They pay us that amount of money.
For fire protection.
No, sir, for EMS protection.
Oh, okay, for EMS protection. Right. Okay. What about fire?
North side fire tax. The
Okay.
entire north side of on the north side of the river is covered with one fire tax.
Okay. Longacre Township has an EMS tax, am I correct? But no fire tax. North side, okay, good. And then what is the North Side Fire District? I think you pretty well answered that. I have another issue here. How are we handling the Sydney roll-off site? Who has the plans and the construction budget estimates for that thing? I heard $1 million, and we've had a lot of engineering plans brought through here in the past that really turned out to be bogus deals. So who has the plans and who has the budget?
The county engineer has that work, has been dealing with that. So she has all the stuff related to that, I'm not sure whether the solid waste committee has that or not.
Well, would you have him send that to me? I would like to see those. Okay? And then we got questions about the fire tax, and I have another issue. The county paid $400,000 for a 6-acre dredge pond at Wrights Creek, with me sitting here telling them that the toe was eroding while they were spending the money, and that it was going to take large sums of money to protect the toe of the dredge pond. And guess what? At the last meeting, we've got approximately $280,000 bill that somebody's going to pay, whether we can get it from grants or whoever, to protect that dredge pond. So we've got right now we've got over $700,000 in a park, in a mud hole, a dredge pond, at Wrights Creek, that nobody is going to use. I move that we abandon this project, sell the property, and get away from the park at Wrights Creek, because it's right beside of another park that the state provides that is used.
I'll second it. Now, the state would probably be the highest and best.
We could give it to the state for that matter. We'll save a lot of money.
Commissioner Waters?
I think we're still in the discussion on, we don't have any numbers back yet. Are we in the process of trying to get grant funds to do that, to stabilize it? So.
Well, the question here is, do we need a park that's going to cost us over $1 million that is at Wrights Creek, that nobody knows where it is, and nobody's going to want to use, when you have a state park right beside of it that is used? This is another useless project that Beaufort County has that something needs to be done with. You put bathrooms on that, and you're creating one of the finest places in the county to deal drugs.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a recommendation that we put it on the agenda for July for further discussion.
I don't have a problem with further discussing it, but how much of that money for that is in this budget, Mr. Manager?
For that work?
Yeah, Wrights Creek. I didn't think so. That's fine. Now, how are we handling the roll-off at Sydney Crossroads. We promised the people at Sydney Crossroads that when we shut down the situation at Pamlico Beach, that they were going to have a better roll-off. And that was almost 3 years ago. The county has done absolutely nothing about it. I haven't seen anything in this budget to make good on that promise. And that's what I just asked for, was the plans for that, is what that was going to cost. So how are you going to handle this going forward? Is there anything in this budget to help the people at Sydney Crossroads?
The solid waste committee was charged with looking at that and determining what they were going to do with solid waste sites, and we're waiting on that recommendation from them.
Well, that needs to go forward. We have misinformed these people long enough.
We're meeting on the 11th,
Okay?
10 o'clock.
I will try to be there. How many vehicles are in this budget, all total?
Four for the sheriff's office, and maybe one other, but I need to look. I can't
Just
remember.
5? Okay.
Maybe 5.
How many trailers are in here? We're not going to buy any trailers to pull behind any vehicles this coming year.
I'm not saying we're not, but I'm not aware of it being a capital expenditure that was set out specifically for something. I mean,
Well, every time I look around, the reason I'm asking this question is every time I look around, I see a new trailer somewhere by some department. And this becomes a policy matter when we start buying trailers to pull around the county to provide services. That is policy. That's not up to staff. That's up to commissioners. So if we're not buying any trailers, I think we're okay. That suits me fine.
I'm not sure we've ever brought trailers back. We've brought vehicles back.
That's precisely why I'm bringing this up in this budget. It is a policy matter. It is not up to staff to decide they're going to go out and buy trailers for anything.
Really?
Yeah, it needs to come to the commissioners, because when you buy the trailer provides a service to either a local community or somewhere they're going to haul it. The county is providing a service. That is policy.
Okay, that's new to me, Commissioner Richardson.
I understand
had
it
not heard
is.
that before.
I agree.
I had not heard that before, and if the board wants us to bring back, like we bring back vehicles, if someone needs to purchase a trailer to do work, we'll certainly bring that back to the.
Well, I think it should come before the commissioners, because I see departments with trailers and I'm saying, what do they need another trailer for?
I think that's what I just said. I will
Yeah.
bring it back to the board.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
That takes care
That's
of
what the board said too.
my immediate questions.
Any more discussion? Red vote?
If you went through the capital budget for the school, last year, this year, they had budgeted items on their priority list, $248,000 worth of stuff that was never used. They zeroed it out. They made a budget amendment or adjustment. But they did spend $429,000 on stuff that wasn't in the priority list. And I just want to know if we're okay with that. I mean, any of those capital things are going to get moved around over a course of a year if something breaks and you got to fix it. Or do you want to have some additional input on that? They provided us the priority list. But about a third of it, they didn't stick with that one from on last year's.
Mr. Richardson. I guess my concern would be, John, if they were moving money from capital over to operating or current expense. That would...
No, they didn't do that. It stayed within the capital. And it was part of that money that they spent was not on any list, though, in terms of being a capital expenditure or capital need in the future. Well, I'll give you an example.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out that within these government budgets, the definition of capital that John and I understand doesn't apply. It's really more what you want to throw into capital, because I see the schools all the time spending money from current expense into capital, what I call capital. So there's no definition here. It's neither here nor there.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
I think probably what you're thinking about, John, is that when we think of capital purchases, we're thinking about an automobile or a trailer, something of some size. But when you look at their, you see some in here that's $500, $5,000, $2,000, which I think you and I would consider that as current expenses, anything below a certain price.
Well, for example, they've got down safety and security systems. Their their budget adjustment started out with a beginning budget from us was zero. And then they're budgeting now an adjustment of $207,000. They also have another $175,000 on the second page for security and safety, alarms and PA systems. And in the current budget, they've got down as a priority another $300,000 for camera systems and locks.
I thought everything they had was locked in cameras.
Well, I don't know. My question,
over and over.
my question is, do we want more, to have more input? And I think from a budget standpoint process, we ought to be involved earlier on as the school budget starts to develop this. And I think we've got somebody that sits on the facility committee with the college, right? That's you. We don't have anybody with the school system, do we?
And God knows I don't want to be on.
Do you want to go?
I don't know. But don't you think we can have better input into the budget development if we're at the table?
Well, you have to understand, they got, Mr. Mayor, and I see where you're going with this.
Yeah,
But they are elected body too.
I understand. Yeah.
And, I feel the same way about the school board, sheriff's department, the manager's office. I don't like some of the things that they do. Sometimes I don't like a lot of things they do, but I promise myself I'm not gonna manage their budget. If we give them money for cars, and that's all I can do is raise my hand for cars. And God knows I don't want to be on their facility at the school, but if you want to be on it, I will support you 100%.
I don't have any problem being on it, but if you give them a budget for cars and they use it for carpet.
That's their battle wax.
Okay.
Come back, don't get no more carpet.
Commissioner Richardson, yes.
I've been here 24 years, so let me help John out with this. John, it's only been in the last 5 or 6 years that we stopped doing exactly what you are talking about. The school board brought their capital budget in early in the year. The budget was gone over by the commissioners. We had input into, the whole board had input into it, and eventually we hammered it down to an approved capital budget. But what was going on prior to that was the school board was taking the money out and spending it on whatever they wanted to spend it on. So we started funding them quarterly, and we required the school board to come before the commissioners quarterly, and they brought in what they had actually spent money on that was within their capital budget, and we paid them then. We didn't dump the money on them and run like we're doing now. And if they had money left over from a project, we allowed them to carry it forward to another project. In other words, we didn't take their capital just because they were efficient in spending it. So I don't have a problem with what you're talking about. I heartily support it. We should get back to that so we know more about what's going on in the schools. And I have a statement before we vote,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if
Go ahead.
you're ready to vote. You ready for the statement?
Yes, go ahead.
You guys know what it is. I'm not going to vote for this budget. And the reason I'm not voting for this budget is it increases the county payroll by 1 employee. The budget ordinance does not control abusive spending and personnel practices. Revenues are underestimated considering the status of the economy. So I think we're going to be sitting here trying to figure out how to cut this budget. And we may get by this year, but it's certainly going to happen next year. And number 5, the board failed to require the school system to provide a believable accounting of the surplus generated by the virus shutdown in the first half of the year 2020. So it's a fat budget. There's a lot of wasteful spending in this budget, and I'm not going to vote for it.
Mr. Waters?
My only comment to that is during the workshop, I think I made that statement when he was, rolling up the budget. And so I'm not, he's done exactly what I expected him to do. And to call this a fat budget, I think is ridiculous.
Anyone else? Stan?
At some point in the future, I'd like to see Beaufort County disband its finance committee and go back to the days when commissioners had long extended budget workshops and worked a lot of this out, with all the budget workshops being filmed. Until we do that, I'm not voting for any budget.
Mr. Chairman, I think the public should understand this budget process. I mean, it starts out in February. Department heads come in, and I think that you've invited commissioners to sit in on that discussion. Now, I'm not sure that some people hear that, but they're invited to sit in on it. So if you have a particular area that you would like to sit in on, you're entitled to do that. We've had good discussions, and for the public to think, for you to make a comment and the public to think that we've not done our due diligence, I think is absolutely wrong.
Anyone else? Hang on, is there anyone else? Okay, Sam.
Sitting in on a discussion, having all the numbers and voting and discussing it in real time with cameras rolling so everybody can see what's going on, two different things. When you've got a group that's going to do what they want to do, and they're going to talk amongst themselves. There's just 3 commissioners. It's just fair and meet for them to do that. But for the rank and file commissioner, who is just as responsible for the management of the public's money, that commissioner should be able to make decisions just like people in the finance committee do. So you may think this is a grand way of doing it. I think it's a fallible way of doing it. We have a difference of opinion. We'll have to sort this out through elections.
Brian?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify the question about the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee essentially the Finance Committee doesn't have anything to do with the budget.
No, but what goes on gives direction. And by the time it gets to us.
No, sir. No, sir. The Finance Committee does not have any direction in the budget. We get that from the board at the planning session, and then we work with our department heads based on that, and then we bring a recommended budget back to the board, who has their own work sessions. The Finance Committee doesn't deal with the budget as it's prepared. That's not their job. They're the audit committee. They look at the audit. They answer questions relating to issues regarding the finances as we're going on throughout the year, those kind of things. They don't craft or develop the budget. We do that. We bring you a recommended budget. Then you work through that and decide what you want to do with it. And then we take that information and give you a final budget like we have tonight. I just want to be clear on the Finance Committee. It may sound like the Finance Committee does that, but that's not what they do. They're in more of an audit function. They deal with the auditors. They look at books, those kind of things. And that's the audit committee that this board put together and has an audit charter that's related to that. So maybe it's a misnomer to call them the Finance Committee. They're the Audit Committee.
Okay, the Audit Committee, Finance Committee. Quite possibly, it could be they have very little to do with anything other than to become a symbol of why we don't have budget workshops any longer, more than 6 or 7 hours.
Commissioner Rebholz.
But I would like to finish, please. I am not going to vote for any budget until we start having long budget workshops with the cameras going. That's what I'm going to do.
You're a cameraman.
I sure am. I was responsible for getting the cameras in these buildings 2 decades ago, maybe longer. and I'm gonna want to get back to that at some point.
Okay, Brad Bowles?
I'm on that finance committee, and we've met once since I've been the commissioner. And at no time did we get into anything to do with budget. Okay? All we did was look at the current expenses against the current budget. Nothing to do with the future at all. Okay? And it was because of that I came to realize that as a body, we weren't hearing from the finance officer at any of our meetings. How stupid is that? How can you have meetings and you want to be overseeing the budget and you don't even hear from the finance committee, finance officer? So that's why I asked Anita to come to the meetings and give us those updates. Also, you indicated we added a person in this budget. Well, according to this record, we would drop 7.
No, the 5.
We're at 381, we were at 388 last year.
The 5 frozen positions were a ploy, and we added a person in addition to the 5 people that came off. We created another position. Now, whether 5 people came off or not is debatable because the sheriff has trouble keeping people, and he may never have had those people to begin with. They may have been ghost positions from day one. I suspect that they were.
I'm just trying
to... You and I can debate this as long as you want to.
Clarify that you said we added a position.
We did.
There's nothing in any of these that says we added a position. It says we have 388 authorized last year. We got 381 this year authorized. That's not a fact that we added a position.
We created a new position in the county, a new job, a new classification.
We did. We eliminated 2 in that department.
Anyone else? Time to vote? Anything?
I think we're voting on the ordinance.
I make a motion, we budget ordinance.
Yeah.
We approve the 2021 budget ordinance.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Well, I can't agree with Mr. Richardson when he says it's a fat budget, but I also can't vote for this budget. Out of almost $60 million, and I'm not up for re-election, and I can say what I want to say today, because I'm trying to be re-elected. Not one time. The only thing we said about our employees is that we're going to freeze positions to keep them laying off. I don't think it's fair that some of our employees this year got raises and the other ones didn't. I don't think it's fair that out of a $59 million budget, you could only find a cut in the least of the, and that was the schools, children. And that is one reason I will not vote for this budget. Jerry, what's my reputation?
I don't reward bad behavior.
That's why I'm not going to vote for this budget.
Anyone else? Time to vote. All those in favor of the budget ordinance, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? 4-3, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Right.